Boker Tov, everyone. We're here for another Heartfelt Haftarah. We are now in the third week in which I'm wearing exactly the same clothing, garments, and objects as I was in the previous 2 weeks. Again, trying to cover for travel and vacation. So if it feels old, you know, it is. But in any case, so we're doing this week's Heartfelt Haftarah, and we are focusing on the book of Numbers, the Torah portion called Shelach Lecha. And Shelach Lecha has one of the defining stories in the book of Numbers, which is the story of the spies, really the catastrophe of the spies, in which Moses commissions 12 representatives, one from each tribe, to investigate the land in preparation for the invasion and occupation that God has commanded them to do. And most of the spies come back discouraged, reporting that the people are gigantic, that their fortresses are impenetrable, that there's no way that we, the bundle of Israelite refugee slaves, are going to be able to overcome this people. This negative assessment is not unanimous, but it's enough to discourage the Israelites and to frustrate God. So God tells the people, oh, look it, you've still got a slave mentality. I can't put up with this. We're not going to achieve anything with you people. So you're going to march around in the wilderness for 40 years. And when this generation, or at least the fully formed individuals of this generation have passed on, then their children and the next generation will be the ones, people who have lived in a state of freedom. They will be able to occupy and settle this land. So that's the catastrophic story. It is, I like to say, a very British story, because in every British wartime narrative, they always muck it up in the early part. There's always a Dunkirk, or there's always, a defeat by the Revolutionary French. The British always screw up their early land battles, and it's only later that they pull their act together. And that's exactly what's going on here. So if we totally mucked it up in the book of Numbers in our Haftarah portion, which comes from the book of Joshua, we get it right this time. All right. Second time's the charm. 40 years later, it's so much easier. Anyway, so our Haftarah portion comes from Joshua chapter 2. In this particular narrative, we have crossed the Jordan. We are in the land, and our first obstacle is the city of Jericho. Now, just on a tent peg note, Jericho, one of the oldest known urban habitations in humanity. Archaeologists have dug and dug and dug down further in the town of Jericho, and it appears that there has been a town, a city, some form of continuous habitation in Jericho for 6,000 BCE. So it's not the oldest human habitation in the world, but it's right up there at the very beginning of when human beings started to urbanize. And so this is important, and the reason it's been continually occupied is because it occupies a strategic location. It's along the Jordan, but not only that, it stands between the Jordan and the only easy path west over the Judean hills and mountains to get to the area that will become Jerusalem, and then the coastal plain beyond that. So Jericho has always been occupied because it's such a special place. And the Bible acknowledges that Jericho is the first obstacle that the Israelites have to overcome in order for them to be able to occupy the land. And so in this narrative, again, 12 spies are organized, and they are sent out not by Moses this time, but by his successor, Joshua. And they go to investigate. And uh, a scout, a spy, what's one, what's the other? Is it different? In modern culture, we think of spies as individuals who disguise their allegiance and deceive our enemies, and usually they don't enjoy the protection of military rules and things like that. A scout is usually a military soldier on horseback in an airplane, whatever, who just goes ahead and reconnoiters or does reconnaissance. These people are really behaving more in the sense of reconnaissance, though the story hinges on the fact that they walk into Jericho, they look around, they get an assessment, and then someone sort of says, who are those strangers? Those are not our usual visitors. Could they be Israelites? And so, in fact, they end up having to hide. Uh, Not an easy thing to do in a city. Jericho was probably a complex urban structure, but about 6,000 people, 8,000 people. It shouldn't be that hard to find them. And in fact, I always think of Monty Python and The Life of Brian, where there's a scene where the revolutionaries suddenly have to hide in a house, and the Romans charge in. And even though they're so obviously visible in the various places they're hiding, the Romans simply can't find them. And something like this unfolds. What happens is, and it's really a plausible description, that they find a sympathetic woman, Rahav, who's described as a harlot, city prostitute, maybe, unmarried woman who just violates the conventions of Jericho civilization. Maybe that. We don't know exactly what her status is, but she's not a high social standing. She's a bit of an outcast within Jericho society, and she recognizes the spies, and she says to them, "I will help you hide and escape if you spare my family." Right? So she believes that God is going to deliver the city to the Israelites, and she is banking on their victory. So she does, in fact, hide them on the roof of her house, probably by covering them with, I don't know, bulrushes and the various things that actually traditionally get stored on the flat roof of a house in ancient Canaan, and as a result, they are not found, and they are able to escape by climbing down the wall in the nighttime. So this is a story about a woman who takes a chance and puts herself at personal risk in order to realize what she believes is the right and proper thing to happen. Uh, she's not a spy, but you could call her part of the resistance, right? And as a result of this particular incident, not only is the spy mission successful in this particular case and for the Israelites, but by throwing her lot with the Israelites, she sustains herself and her future. And she gambles on a new world, and she is successful. Now, interestingly enough, the rabbis are not satisfied with the fact that her family merely survives the destruction of Jericho, but they have to give her a happily ever after story. And in their happily ever after story, she ends up marrying Joshua. We're never told that he's married. He seems to be a gentleman bachelor, And that's just completely unsatisfactory to the rabbis. So let's give her the resistor, the harlot, the woman who survives Jericho, and they live happily ever after on the basis of that. So it's a story about taking risks and being willing to gamble on what you think the future will look like. And that's what our Haftarah has to offer for us this week. So with that, I wish you a Shavua Tov, a Shabbat Shalom, and we'll talk again next week. Maybe by then I will actually have changed my clothing.